This is session number 3. About to give an introduction to my co-presenter today, Emma from Cork Community Television, and I'm Brian from Dublin Community Television, DCTV. I'm the outreach and training coordinator with DCTV. What a wonderful panel we just had. The stories that we got from Des and Corinne and from Bose really explained what we might be posing as a question in this section, which is how to get people involved. What does DCTV, and inserts Cork Community Television there as well, do? So a lot about what we are, an explainer to why we do things the way that we do them. The first slide I have for you is ownership. And in a hierarchy of things that are important to us, our ownership structure is very important. So we're a co-op, as many community media organisations are, at the base of how we structure ourselves in our governance and ownership. And with that, it gives us the kind of the idea and the sense of who we are. So we are owned by the community. We provide pluralism to broadcasting through being connected with so many people as our owners. Now, in practice, that ownership might be enhanced by larger membership, or even more active membership if you've already got a large membership and they're not that active. So we pride ourselves on this ownership structure, and when it gets to having a board of management and bank accounts and the legal stuff, it's pretty much the same as other organisations. But then at the ethos as to why we do it and other aspects of who we are will come up. You'll see more about us. Access. We pride ourselves on access, and it's been there for decades. I have been in community media for 39 years. Okay, so I was so high when they let me into pirate radio in the 1980s, and I've been at it all the way through. And access was always the mantra of community media. We provide access. And there was nothing wrong with that. Access to studios, access to equipment, access to the airwaves. And then COVID came. And I was working at a community radio station out in Blanchardstown, and we had no access. We had no ventilation, we had no windows that opened in the studio. We couldn't go there. We couldn't get another premises. Everything went remote. Access changed. Access became, are you trained and skilled enough to use what everyone has, a mobile phone, at your kitchen table? Did the quality of what came from that matter as much as the content that trumped that quality? And there was access to airwaves where the messages were more important, the connectivity and the broadcasting mass became something that people couldn't access the churches. So that went 6 days a week and things like that. So access as a word and what it means to community media can change when we're faced with such challenges. But access is core and very important. And my clicker is back working. Training. So whatever the technology, we want to get more out of the studio, the equipment, or that mobile phone on a tripod or at a kitchen table. So through training, we work with communities and we enhance their ability to communicate and advocate for themselves on air. So we end up bringing people in. The ingest point is induction into what I'm talking about now, community media, what it's all about, and training within the means of production and how things happen and how they get on air and how to do research and scripting and all that planning that goes into making community media. We are alternative media at our core, and this offers us the opportunity to do things quite different. A lot of people I have found over the years look at community media and think they're just not very good at making it. It's not, very professional, it's not very polished, it doesn't look like Home and Away or Neighbours. But we don't necessarily want to be Home and Away or Neighbours, but that's not why we make what we make. And we make some wonderfully produced high quality films as well. But at the core is the alternative approach that we have in community media, that we bring other voices, not necessarily the predominant voices, and that brings us back to the pluralistic approach that community media has on the broader broadcasting spectrum. We are hyper-local. So at commercial levels across these islands, we don't have a very strong tradition of local television. Maybe in the UK it goes to a regional level and it works for news and some opt-outs, but network television is pretty much where it's at a national level. Community television has this opportunity to be hyper-local, as does other community medias that are on radio, or if it's in print, that they can be really close to their community. And as Des said earlier, that community doesn't need to be a geographic community, it can be really close to their community of interest. Another reason why we exist in what we do is that we're not for profit, that we don't seek to make a return on the activities that we do. And I find this is liberating, because our financial structures and how we operate are not adjudicated on the commercial success of the programme that we do, allowing us to be that alternative media. So the not-for-profit is that badge that we wear, that we're quite proud of wearing, saying that this doesn't define us. And then, come on in, we'll be setting up for lunch as we go. Community development. It's often explained as a reason of what we do. It's how we are adjudicated, it's how we are measured. With the social benefit framework, the things that we do, the impacts that we have through our community broadcasting, our training and our engagement with organisations, the groups that are here today on the attendance sheet, and people we work with across the decades, is the community development work that we do. And that's now, as of 2020, June 2020, they launched the framework. We are measured by that social benefit markers. There's 6 of them, and that is great, because if I jump back to a lot of the points I've mentioned, like not-for-profit, people who don't understand community media ask, how many listeners or viewers have you got? And over the decades, that's been a struggle to explain the correct answer to that question. And that is that we don't enumerate our viewers and their eyeballs to sell to advertisers. We work in a completely different fashion. Now with the social benefit frameworks, we can quite happily show how we do that. So, my problem with my clicker is I keep clicking the wrong button. It's not that it's not working. We're also on cable. We're online. We're on demand. We're on players. We're on social media. We're on HD. We've got some standard definition. We're digital. We're colour. But our technology doesn't define us. So as we think about membership and how to get involved, we shouldn't be limiting ourselves by previous or future technologies. The community makes television and the community develops. This is us out working with RAID. Apologies, they were to be on the last panel, they couldn't make it today. Making television, and then in August 30th, we had RAID night and we broadcast 4 hours of a block of 4 hours of programs, about 13, 14 programs across 4 hours, all from that one organisation, showing their archive and putting new context to it and bringing it to air. We work with filmmakers, archive holders, community groups, colleges, trade unions, writers, poets, artists, musicians, and all comers. So we're not limited as to who we will work with. We will work with all comers. We provide the training, skills to help communities get programmes made and to get them on air. So that kind of comes baked in, that if you're going to get involved and you don't know how to do something, the people who are already there and know how to do it will be skilled to bring you through the paces and get you skilled up and trained. This is it's a wonderful photograph. It's kind of a hybrid because there's a split just about here where I've split the photograph. That's the front and back, and it's not interesting to anybody but techies, but that's where DCTV comes from. This is us playing out from our server at Virgin Media in Dublin. I won't get any more exact about the location because they're a bit precious about that, but this is where we stream from. But we also have a website, and as we said earlier, our website also carries our signal as well as channel 802 on Virgin Media. We provide access to the distribution for community views and voices that do not usually get heard or get seen on mainstream media. This is a recent panel discussion over in Dublin 8, and we had literally 13 hours request notice to record this, and we went out, recorded it and turned it around for ourselves, but also for the organisation that is a partner with DCTV, and for them to have a record of this day. This is a slide from a recent presentation at the IFI, and we also, as we do productions and all new media that we make, we enhance it for access with Irish Sign Language, with subtitles, and where the project requires it, with some audio description. We preserve TV for archive and keep media repositories open and accessible. This is one of the 8 groups that Des was talking about. Ballymun Communications, we work with them. They work with us, and their stuff gets broadcast and it finds its way to the IFI. I think it's on its way to a part of their player at the moment. So, happy Halloween. The future. And I'll put this point out, it's not necessarily an agreed position of the DCTV board or anything, but I'll just say that massive changes are happening in media. I was at the birth of the World Wide Web in 1994 for me, December 94, in Ireland, when it came to my office. And not a lot really changed for a number of years, maybe 15, 20 years. But now that IP is fast, available in everybody's pocket. The Wi-Fi signals are beaming through this room, and the things that we can do with it have massive changes to the TV. And no, I kind of apologise, and I don't. All my slides have CRT televisions. They're all of an age. They're a little bit older than what we might use now in our homes with flat screens or tablets or mobile phones. But things are changing. And can I suggest that this is a good thing for community media? There are serious commercial problems for that network-sized television. They're challenged by the streamers who are taking their audience away, and the advertising is also moving away from the big network television stations. Not necessarily going to impact community media, which is a positive, because what it impacts them and doesn't impact us can have a huge effect. Can we look to those possibilities and grow in this period? Can we take on the challenges of streaming, of on-demand, of players, while we got our content and our archives together? And sorry for the scary Halloween imagery. So, how to get involved in community television? Maybe not so much why, but how. people all over Ireland can contribute. So if you want to send something in, I think if you're from Wicklow or Louth, it's not going to be not accepted on Dublin Community Television. Similarly with Cork, and we exchange programmes, and we exchange with Belfast. So everybody can send stuff to the community television stations. There's the three that I mentioned: DCTV, Northern Visions in Belfast, and Cork. This Cork slide is from their election broadcasts for the local elections and European elections in June from, was it City Hall? Mm-hmm. And Eddie tells me you'll be doing it again for a forthcoming
possibly, yeah,
general election. So they're the places that they can be sent to. Our vision would be that maybe a channel for the whole of the island of Ireland would be a place to put content, and that could be on a player, and that it could be seen worldwide, but that everywhere in Ireland would have a place to put their community television productions. Volunteer options, we need to develop them. I've seen this done before to varying degrees of success, but we need to map out the jobs that are available in community television. So at the end of the process, I might end up doing less multitasking of being the tech and the outreach and the training, that we can ask people to take on those roles, define them, advertise them through Volunteers Ireland and other places, and accept people in on the basis of their interest and ability to take on a job, and remove all obstacles to entry. I don't want to suggest that we have any nefarious, nasty kind of obstacles ourselves, but what can we do to make it easier to onboard? Can we work with the students of colleges and media departments? Can we work with community groups that they don't have to wonder and work out how it is that you get involved in community television, that it's obvious by their participation in any projects, because that's where we meet people, is through various projects as we circulate around. So to that, we need to be seen, and we need to see it to be it, if they can see us. This is National Community Radio Day in Clare, in Radio Cork Abaskin, and they're broadcasting their radio programming nationally on the network, but also capturing it for TV. We're looking to work with radio on television as a content source in the future. There's lots of great produced, researched and broadcast content going through community radio daily. So if we can get some of that to community television by putting cameras in studios on a permanent basis, the best of it should come to us. But also that people need to see and be aware of us before we can expect them to want to have an interest in volunteering with us. And this is the location where people can get in touch with us from today and any day in the future. Des had his bulletin board Gmail from years ago, as he mentioned. This is a lot shorter. info@dctv.ie is where to go. I'm going to hold questions till the end, if that's okay, and going to switch slides, and Emma's going to present her version of what I've just done. Thank you. Just tuck this part right on the inside.
This one.
That's that one.
Down. Okay. Hi everybody. Great to be here today, and it's fantastic to see, as someone who's kind of followed DCTV's fortunes over the years, I think it's absolutely fantastic to see DCTV rising again, and such interest from people here today. It's just wonderful to see, and thanks to DCTV for inviting me here today. You probably notice I don't have a Cork accent, I'm afraid. Originally from Sligo, been in Cork over 30 years now, still haven't got the accent. So if you were hoping to hear one, I'm afraid you're not going to hear it from me. I took a slightly different approach to this. As we were in a university, I'm not sure if there are any students here, media students, perhaps one or two. So I kind of thought I'd sort of share my journey to getting involved with Cork Community TV and tell you a little bit about Cork Community TV as a result. So I originally had a background in languages and the arts, and I had worked in theatre at the beginning, and then when I was living in Cork I got involved in an oral history documentary about Blackpool on the north side of Cork City. Any of you who've got the train into Cork would have passed through Blackpool. And I suppose from that then I got involved in setting up Frameworks Films back in 1999 with Eddie Noonan, who you'll see there. And I suppose what we were beginning to see is that more and more groups and organisations were using film and video. And there was kind of perhaps a need for a dedicated organisation to work with those groups, provide training and resources. However, I hadn't a background in film, so I said I better quickly, I loved film all my life, but I hadn't the skills. So I did a master's in film production in DIT in 2000 when it was based over in Ainger Street. And it's brilliant to see well, I didn't actually get to see the facilities yet. I'm looking forward maybe to getting a quick peek. But I don't know if any of the old gang are still here, Malachi Higgins or any of the people who I would have been involved with at that stage. But it was a great course, and we were the last batch actually to train on 16mm film cameras and to edit on Steenbecks. And that was wonderful because it was a much slower process, and you really had to think about what you were doing. And I carry that with me today in the digital world we're now in. I suppose the combination of skills and filmmaking, but also a very strong interest in social justice issues, community development. Eddie, in the meantime, he had worked in film for a long time, but had gone back to UCC and done a degree in youth and community work. And I suppose we combined a lot of those practical skills and our interests and developed a methodology. And always at the core of our work was, how can we use media to create a more equal society? And I suppose now we would add on a more equal and sustainable society. So in Frameworks Films, we've worked over the years with many different groups and organisations, looking at what they wanted to do. A lot of them just to communicate their message. Sometimes it was maybe to work with a youth group and to use the skills. Any of you who've ever been involved in a film or TV production know that it's not a solo activity. You've got to communicate with each other. Sound person has to know what the camera person's doing. So it's great for group work skills. And so sometimes, I think it was somebody mentioned earlier, Kieran, maybe it's not necessarily just the product, it's that process of working with groups. Is very much part of what community media is about. Also just telling stories, different communities, whether it be people with disabilities, wanting to make programmes about their issues, working with different migrant communities in Cork. Also then local history and heritage groups wanting to access the media. And I suppose these would be both geographic communities and communities of interest, as mentioned earlier. Training then, getting more groups interested in knowing the skills. Our idea was to try and set up sort of production hubs around the city and county so that more groups would make programmes. We have people then involved in community radio who are interested in moving into community television and provided training for groups there. Skipped one there. Media literacy then was something, a key area we moved into, because as everybody knows, the media might not tell you what to think, but it might tell you what to think about. And I suppose more and more we were interested in working with groups, training people in those skills about how media messages are created, constructed and deconstructed, and the questions to ask. And I suppose that's more and more relevant, as everybody knows. So we became involved with Media Literacy Ireland, organised through Comisiún Man, and that's a very positive development. Archiving then, all of this content. I suppose we've been filming in Cork for over 30 years, and we have a huge collection of the kind of social and cultural and political history of the city from groups that might not always be able to access the mainstream. And that's really important stuff. Every production we've ever made, we don't just keep the finished piece, maybe the hour-long documentary. We keep all the hours and hours and hours of interviews and all of that, and that's crucial. because in years to come, you know, people will want to go back and listen to that shopkeeper on Barrack Street in Cork who worked in the 1950s about what that was like. So I suppose that's something, it's an ongoing project to try to get funding to develop the archive. The screenings then were always really, really important for us. At the end of every project, we'd turn maybe a community centre or an existing arts venue into a cinema for the night. We'd always make sure to get, you know, really good quality picture and sound, because this was people's lives and up on the big screen. You know, they'd spent ages working on these projects. And I suppose it was from those then that we began to get more and more interested in this idea of community television, because people were saying, you know, it's great to have a screening, you know, but how can more people see this? You know, we want to share the work more widely. And we had a great opportunity when Cork was European Capital of Culture in 2005. We did a big project called Cork Widescreen, where we worked with 13 different community organisations, just asking them what is the central, what's the burning issue in your community, and making short documentaries. And then they were shown at two big gala. They were shown in every community, but they were also shown in some big gala night screenings in City Hall. And then, I suppose crucially for today's thing, we had a pilot week of community television, just to sort of test it out. And we were able to, at the time we had Forest Sports Channel, they was a local cable channel. We were able to access that for a week and put out community content. And we got a great reaction. You know, people were saying, because I suppose, you know, we don't get to see an awful lot of Cork on TV. And so for people to see the local this and that person, you know, but also learning about some of the issues. And we also source content from community stations nationally and internationally. And people were fascinated, so we said, yeah, this is definitely something worth pursuing. We eventually set up then, we got the licence from what was then the Broadcasting Authority, you know, Commission of Ireland, BCI, now Comisiún na Man. We established ourselves as a separate organisation in Cork Community Television, as a not-for-profit organisation, and eventually got the licence. This is it being launched by Minister Eamon Ryan, a much younger looking Eamon Ryan there. We're all younger there, back in 2009. We're on channel 803, so we're one lower than DCTV, but we also live stream as well. And that was really important for us because we're a city and county, and obviously a lot of areas in the county couldn't access cable television, just simply didn't exist. So very early on we managed to get online and start streaming. Up until very recently, the channel was run by volunteers. As you'll see, we launched kind of around 2008, 2009, just as the whole country was going belly up with the financial crash. So all of the funding streams that we had been hoping to access all fell away, and our initial plans, you know, for a great big studio and all these things just didn't materialise. But we kept going, we kept on air, and we over time kind of gathered a really great group of volunteers. And I suppose what we really wanted to do was to enable communities and geographical and communities of interest to make, manage and broadcast their programmes with, I suppose, an overall view to increase social inclusion and to make, I suppose, Cork a better place for everybody. We very quickly realised that we couldn't do as much of the production side of things as we wanted to, simply because we didn't have the funding or resources, so we concentrated more on being a channel for people to get their content out. Our members were able to access sound and vision funding through Comisiún na Man, and some great documentaries were made. And then I suppose we also, a couple of other one-off projects that we did as a community TV station. This was back in 2009, where we linked in with DCTV and P5 TV, which was operating at the time in Navan, ran the Community in a Studio project, which enabled us to work with a range of different communities. And there because we didn't have a studio, we linked in with a local college, known still as St. John's College, which was running a PLC course in film and television, and used their services. As Brian mentioned earlier, I suppose another big thing, we're very interested in kind of local democracy and increasing communities' understanding of what goes on at a local level in the city council and what their councillors do. So, and it was another great way for us to get our volunteers involved as well. Those maybe weren't doing full-scale productions, but were kind of keen to get behind a camera, or maybe we linked in with local colleges that were running journalism courses, and some of their students could do some actual real live interviews with politicians. So we covered the general election 2011 and some of the local elections. This is us just in Cork City Hall. Now these were massive undertakings too, and they were difficult. We didn't have the same budgets as RT, and yet we were for the last ones in June earlier this year. We were broadcasting and live streaming the whole way through, and it was great because for a lot of first-time councillors, for example, to be able to get their interview, to be interviewed, and this was going out live on Cork Community TV channel, it's going out on Cork Community live stream, and it was also going out on Cork City Council's own live stream as well. And this was great exposure for them, and a lot of them kind of did come up to us afterwards and said, look, we really appreciated that. And then we also had Micheál Martin and all the seasoned people too, but it was good for them to see the importance of a local channel as well. We hopefully might be back, who knows, in another couple of weeks doing it all over again. And I suppose just to say that then, I mentioned up until recently we were run by volunteers. The social benefits scheme that Brian mentioned earlier is a huge change for community television. This is funded again through Comisiún Man's Sound and Vision scheme, but it's specifically, enabling radio and TV stations, community radio and TV stations for the first time, to not just focus on making a production, but also to bring in training and development and to pay for staff costs and rent and utilities and things like that we haven't had to date, and it's been absolutely brilliant. For us, what we did is we ran a project called the Access Studio Project. It enabled us to set up a small studio space and to bring communities, some of the ones we've worked with in the past, and it was great to bring them back again, and we had a series of discussion type programs. So I suppose just finishing up, if people are interested in getting involved, for us it's similar to DCTV. We'd encourage groups to become members. We're open to not-for-profit organisations. Some individuals maybe aren't part of that, or students. We do take a lot of students on as well through the various colleges, and they might not be part of an organisation but want to get involved, and they can volunteer then in that case. We have a community notice board. It's off at the moment, but hopefully will come back soon. It's an opportunity for not-for-profits to, if they have local workshops coming up or things like that, to put that out on the channel. So submit a programme. More and more groups are making stuff, which is fantastic, and able to make stuff without the same expensive equipment that was needed in the past. So if you have stuff, get it onto DCTV or CCTV. We actually would love to see stuff. Obviously, there's a few requirements around, copyright, or making sure that all the people who are in the programme know that they're going to be on TV, and making sure you've got clearances and things like that. But a lot of that, even if it's stuff that was shot before, sometimes you can go back and get those permissions and get it out there. We're always looking for more content. Available training that comes up. We run things through the sectoral development trainings from again Comisiún Man, and start making content if you haven't already. We would say, just get out there and do it. Don't feel like sometimes you think you have to wait till we get the funding or the grant or whatever, or have everything right. We say don't just get out there and start making stuff. Put it in. Sometimes it's only by doing it and trying it out that you'll get to see what works, what doesn't. And I think that is the great thing about community TV, is that yes, we have the nice polished documentaries at one end, but we also have room for people who are beginning, starting out in their production as well. Just finally, a recent development from us is then that we have now also set up Cork Community Media Hub, and it's our plan over time that the community TV channel will operate within the hub. And I suppose this is, for us, our way that we see of making the whole thing more sustainable in the future, because I suppose media is changing, as Brian has said, and we have set this up now as a social enterprise, bigger than just the community TV station. So we're basically, I suppose, pulling together all of the work that we've done since the very beginning in terms of production, working with groups, the media literacy training, the archiving, and live streaming, all under one roof, Cork Community Media Hub. And I suppose these are some of our things that we think we'll be able to do then, ultimately, to produce more content. Sometimes people say, should you really need community TV now? Don't you have YouTube and whatever? But I think, for us, it's the idea of having a curated space where we can show programming from community and voluntary sector, environmental groups, where people know, if I want to find out what's going on some of the great stuff we heard about earlier from those and the African, sorry, I can't remember the name of the organisation, the National
African Solidarity Centre.
African Solidarity Centre. That people know, okay, I can go on to DCTV or I can go on to CCTV, NBTV in Belfast, and I can find out stuff that's happening, maybe stuff I could get involved in. So it's that idea of a curated space, but also a space where we can have some of the discussions in communities about stuff that's happening. And that's an area that we would, I suppose, now that we have a little bit of studio space, we want to be able to have that space for, local discussion, debate, to encourage participatory democracy, all of these things. And I suppose ultimately telling our stories and democratising storytelling. So thanks very much for listening, and that's our current webinar.
Thanks, Emma. I'm going to take some questions. Just maybe before we do, I'd add to the curated nature of the content, the regulated nature, because I think the regulation and the codes allows us to stand shoulders above some of the stuff that makes its way to TikTok and WhatsApp and YouTube that might not be regulated, might not adhere to codes, and might not be very trusted. So codes are there, and a lot of people might not like them. We observe them, and observe them and put in observations every time they're being revised and stuff, because codes and regulation is really important in this fake news media world that we're entering into, or are already in. Sorry, I'll shut up now. Questions?
Can you say a bit more about the codes and exactly what they are?
Yeah. So the codes would be across all the kind of news gathering and what can and can't be said, and fairness, objectivity, rights to reply. All those things are governed. So the Commission put in place the codes. They've been adopted through legislation over the years. They're observed and changed over time because things are changing. So if you think about referenda, the Commission and the Commission Taucon are also looking at, should there be a moratorium on the eve of an election? Things like that are getting changed constantly, but they are the things that must be observed. And then you've got this social media that until very recently hadn't to abide by any of that, and some of them will have to start abiding to some of what the broadcasters have always adhered to. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, both of you mentioned kind of partnering with colleges and getting kind of student volunteers in, or students working on programs. And I know there's people from the FE sector as well as universities here, but what kind of model has worked really well for you? When has that been very successful? What does that look like when it's successful?
So currently in DCTV we're working with Closhadoolig and Coolock, which is very close to my office. So Community of Geography, definitely there. And they have used a recent project to look into their own college's archive and resurface stuff and bring new context to it and make new content and media out of their archive. Is Kieran in the room? Maybe anything you'd like to add from a longer kind of period of time with colleges? And I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I'd just be a little cautious about over-promising. Students have assignments to do, and you can't always be asking too much of students, because their lecturers won't be happy, because they go missing often enough to go drinking and go to work and important things like that. So with Closhadoolig, we tried to focus on being there kind of at the beginning and talking to them about what their assignments would be at year end, and trying to build in DCTV as part of that. So as a pilot last year, we felt that was moderately successful. So at year end, they knew they were producing something for DCTV. So maybe we can grow that. The archive ones are a big question. I know that TUD has years and years of archives as well, but the meaning of archive is a big one too. I mean, most of us have attics full of stuff stored, but you wouldn't really call it an archive. Now, there is an archive fund, and Emma mentioned that as well, that we have tried a few times to get access to that archive fund because there's a lot of material there, but unless you can really catalogue it and access it easily, it's more like just boxes of stuff in your attic. I think there's huge potential in getting young people and students involved, but finding that model, you're right to ask that question. So my only suggestion there is maybe to be there at the beginning and to be talking to the academic people when they're planning the assignments for the year ahead, and see how we can be, see how we can bring something additional to that, rather than be an extra burden that they have to fulfill. So my guess is the answer is in there somewhere.
And I suppose just for ourselves, sometimes, you know, some students have actual work experience requirements. I guess that's the other area where we feel it works well. But, you know, especially if we're on production with something where we feel they can really come in and actually get hands-on experience. You know, so that can match up. Sometimes if we're in the middle of preparing funding applications, it's not so interesting for them. But if it aligns, you know, we've had some really good examples of students coming on to do work experience, and then some of them staying on as volunteers in their own capacity. Quite a few of our current volunteers who look after our scheduling might have come on and done a 2-week work experience with us, and then got interested and got involved. So that's another model that seems to have worked well.
Question in the centre. Just one question from the centre, and I'll come to you next. Thank you.
I'm just thinking of some of the things I'd be involved in. Like, I'm just wondering how they kind of fit in the. And I think it's great that you have the values. I think that's so essential, given I'm part of a group of people and we do work with some of the homeless international detection applicants, and we've experienced like things that people don't even believe us about because they're not going to be on the news, they're not going to be in any. There's maybe blackouts on them, the guards put blackouts on some of the things about them. People literally were left in a situation, even in this day and age of insane amounts of people with phones. We're telling people things that are going on, but like, oh, I never saw that, I never heard that. I used to fundraise for people in direct provision. Just very, very small, and a really small little places, and I would constantly face it all the time. I never see this on my phone, I never see this on this, that, either. And like, even the little things I was doing, which were very low-key, very inoffensive, were getting blocked by Facebook. And they're the most inoffensive things in the world that I was doing. So I'm just thinking it's great that something like this exists. Like even our so-called local newspapers aren't local, they're owned by Dennis O'Brien, and they've advertising revenues. I remember actually certain big development happened in Dundrum, or I guess what it was. There was lots of stuff that the local newspaper wanted to put in about that development. I'm sure you can all guess what it is. And they were like, oh wait, advertisers. So again, it was blocked. But I'm just wondering, say, some of the things, you know, we don't have any of the videos we have of evictions. We have tons of videos of like illegal landlords carrying out illegal evictions, of attacks on refugees and stuff like that. Like, I don't know then, not that we'd ever want to put this into a content, but say I'm just trying to think of hypothetical things. And then, you know, if you're with the values, like, I know they're really essential. I'm just trying to imagine how.
It sounds like fascinating source material for something great in the future, the near future. I would comment that there is right-wing agitators can walk down Grafton Street with a phone, interview a homeless person, and get 500,000 hits in a week because of the algorithm, and there's revenue on that for them. And we're not in that space of, you know, being killed by the algorithm or being favoured by the algorithm because we're broadcast. So nothing stands in the way of someone turning on 802 or 803 on Virgin, or accessing our websites and seeing what we do. We've actually, DCTV this year, come off YouTube because of that. So at 1 o'clock we broadcast Democracy Now! As our 1 o'clock news, and because of the images of shrouded bodies from Gaza being so numerous, we were getting takedown notices by automatic algorithm with YouTube. But there's other things going on with the within the algorithm that are favouring the far-right media to get a lot of exposure because it engages people and it's negative. And I'll leave that point there.
One of the things that some of the people like supporting the refugees are experiencing. They're now in a situation where they're terrified of doing anything, you know, and the algorithms. So I'm just wondering how, you know, how this can be kind of, or how do you feel your platform would be able to support this or I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not that, I don't know if this will ever happen. I'm just trying to think of hypothetical things in the drama as well.
Well, within our organisations, we would have programming committees, and they would go through stuff before broadcast and check it, and nothing necessarily that you've said, rings any kind of alarm bells, but it would be checked before broadcast, and if it was suitable and well put together, certainly discuss it with us, and let's discuss it over lunch. A question maybe just before lunch.
Well, this is not a question, it's a piece of information
Okay.
related to archives.
Yeah.
I don't know if people here already know about this, because a lot of us do have boxes and boxes of uncatalogued archives. There's an organization, the Archives and Records Association, is offering free training in exploring archival cataloging. And this is on the 21st of November at between 2 and 5 o'clock. It's completely free. I don't know if you're registered with ARA or with Peer Street, but you have to register and bring your own laptop. And it sounds like a great opportunity. They're launching a campaign called Explore Your Archive after that, but I don't know how to get invitations to that. Anyway, but it's I'm going to go to it, and I think that it could be really very helpful for understanding how to put your materials together so they're accessible and usable.
Sounds wonderful. About a month before the last round of archiving was opened in 2018, the summer of 2018, a colleague of mine and I set up an archive, and we've been archiving broadcast media between 1978 and 1988. And what's in shoeboxes in attics is fascinating. So we're putting that at pirate.ie, but there's stuff that's still out there and is still usable, and it hasn't degraded just yet, but it's about to because of analog cassette tape and stuff. We're going to go for lunch. Is there an urgent question or anyone want to ask anything? No. So let's take lunch, and we're back for 2, John? And mingle and meet people that you don't know during lunch.